The message came at 6:42 a.m. Ivy was in the kitchen, barefoot, boiling water for tea. The sunlight was just beginning to slip through the slats of the window blinds, catching the shimmer of the ring still on her finger. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Grayson. For a moment, she smiled. Then she opened the message. I can't do this. I need space. Please cancel everything. I'll handle the vendors. She read it again. And again, the kettle screamed. Her body moved on its own, lifting it from the burner, turning the knob off, setting it back down with careful hands. The words didn't sting. Not yet. They floated, surreal, like a line in someone else's story. She stared at the message while her tea bag sank, untouched. 2 weeks before the wedding. A $10,000 venue booked. Custom invites. Guests. Already arriving from overseas. Her dress fitting scheduled. And 12 weeks into her pregnancy, something only she knew. Grayson didn't even called. No explanation. No fight. No tears. Just that hollow phrase. I need space. It wasn't the first time he'd used that line. Months earlier, after she'd cried during a photo shoot for their engagement magazine feature, he had muttered it with a sigh. You're crowding me. As if emotion were something offensive. She thought back to his silences, the clipped responses, the way his hand began to pull away from hers in public. How he barely touched her belly when she first whispered, I think we're pregnant. A sharp pulse ran through her. She gripped the counter to steady herself. Then, slowly, she set the phone down. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. She didn't reply to no pleading text. No call. No why. Or how could you? Instead, she picked up her planner from the table and tore out the wedding checklist, piece by piece, until it was nothing but scraps. She dumped them in the trash like discarded receipts. Then she walked into the bathroom. Her reflection stared back at her, shoulders still squared, spine still straight, but something in her eyes cracked. She leaned in and whispered to herself, You will not fall apart. Later that afternoon, she sat by the window in silence, one hand resting on her lower stomach, and no one else knew. Not her mother. Not her bridesmaids. Not even the obstetrician, who had yet to confirm the results of her last scan. Only Ivy. And for now, she would keep it that way. She left the ring on the counter before bed. Not angrily, just intentionally, like setting down something that no longer belonged to her. She turned off her phone, knowing the headlines would follow soon. Grayson Wolf calls off wedding to Ivy Halston. She imagined the photos, her smiling, oblivious in white, him smug and perfect in every pixel. Let them think she was broken. Let them think she disappeared. They wouldn't see what came next. Not until she walked in with proof that breathed and cried and called her mama. The morning after the text, Ivy sat by the window again. Same place, same silence, but the air felt heavier. Not just from heartbreak. From memory that IT had been building for months. Grayson had started coming home later. First, it was late meetings. Then, emergency calls at midnight. She remembered waking to the sound of his voice in the hallway. Low, hushed, careful. The first time, she believed it. The second, she listened that he always said the same thing. No, she's asleep. It's fine. She used to think he was talking about work. Now she wasn't sure. There had been other signs, things she'd ignored. The new cologne she didn't buy. The nervous way he'd swipe his screen when she entered the room. How he suddenly became protective of his car after years of letting her borrow it without a word. And then there was the earring. She remembered it too clearly. One morning, she reached into the center console looking for gum and found a small, gold hoop resting on top of the receipts. Not hers. Too thin. Too trendy. She'd held it up. Is this mine? She had asked, voice light but trembling beneath the surface. Grayson had laughed, too quickly. You probably dropped it. You wear, like, a dozen things a day. I don't own anything. Like this. She replied quietly. He didn't answer. He just took it from her, tossed it into the glove compartment, and kissed her cheek with the kind of smoothness only practiced liars possess. That was 3 months before the wedding was canceled. She should have asked more. Should have pressed. But every time she opened her mouth, he found a way to twist the moment. Made her feel irrational, emotional, dramatic. He'd say, You're not yourself lately, Ivy. You've been intense. Are you sure you're okay? Like her instincts were the problem. Like her questions were symptoms that it wasn't just lies. It was erosion, the slow dismantling of her trust by someone who once promised her the world. Back in the present, Ivy sipped cold tea and opened her laptop. Her inbox was full, friends asking about the canceled wedding, vendors looking for confirmation. But one name made her pause. Roxy LeBlanc. She didn't know the woman. Not directly. But the subject line said it all. Grayson Wolf and New Flame. Spotted in Capri, she clicked. There it was, paparazzi shots. Grayson in white linen, arm draped around. A woman in a silver bikini. The caption didn't even mention Ivy. It called him newly single tech god. The woman was younger, polished, tall, and wearing earrings. Thin, gold hoops that Ivy's stomach turned. Not with jealousy, not even with sadness. Just clarity. This wasn't about a broken wedding anymore. This was about who she used to be and who she was about to become. She closed the laptop and looked down at her belly. 12 weeks, and already showing. The twins, she hadn't said the word aloud yet. But the scan didn't lie. He had chosen someone else, and she would choose herself. The exam room was quiet. Too quiet for a moment like this. Ivy lay still on the padded table, the paper beneath her crackling with each breath. The monitor beside her flickered blue, rhythmic. Then came it. The sound that didn't echo once, but twice. Thump, 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 thump. The technician turned the screen toward her, smiling gently. There are two, she said. You're having twins. Ivy blinked. Not from disbelief. From something else. Something deeper. It wasn't fear. Or sadness. It was all 0.2 lives, 0.2 separate heartbeats, 0.2 tiny beings growing in the dark. Unaware they were already survivors, she swallowed hard. Are they okay? They're perfect, the doctor replied, placing a calm hand over Ivy's. Strong. Even. Ivy nodded slowly, staring at the grainy image on the screen. A rush of thoughts flooded her. Baby names she'd once scribbled in notebooks, the nursery wallpaper she'd bookmarked, the blue shoes she once held at a store and never bought. All the plans she had buried under Grayson's silence came surging. Back like a tidal wave. 20 minutes later, she sat alone in the waiting room. Ultrasound images clutched tightly in her hand. Everyone around her seemed distracted, on phones, whispering to partners, staring at floor tiles. No one noticed her, and, for the first time in weeks, she let herself cry. Not a sob, not a breakdown, just tears, hot and constant, sliding down her cheeks like a quiet protest against everything she'd held in. She cried for the way he left. She cried for the text. She cried for the questions she never got to ask. But she didn't cry long, because somewhere between the third and fourth tear, something inside her hardened. Not bitter, not cold, just clear. She wiped her face, stood up slowly, and looked out the clinic's wide glass doors. Beyond them was the city, cars honking, lives moving, futures unfolding. She folded the ultrasound neatly, tucking it into her bag. They will never feel unwanted, she whispered. Not by him, not by the world, and never, not even for a second, by her. That night, she sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. She began listing what she needed, not emotionally, but logistically. A place to stay long-term, childcare support, legal counsel, maternity leave options. She wasn't going to spiral. She was going to plan. The ache didn't disappear, but it didn't paralyze her anymore. Grayson had tried to disappear before the truth arrived, but this truth? It now had two names, two hearts, and a future that didn't require his permission. The first thing Ivy did was delete the apps one by one. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. She didn't just log out. She erased them. The filters, the false smiles, the filtered lies. Every curated post about her perfect life with Grayson vanished in a few taps. Gone were the beach photos, the engagement announcement, the hand-on-belly moments with glowing captions. She even deleted the draft of the wedding hashtag. That life was over. Not paused, not broken. Over 2 days later, she walked out of the high-rise apartment they once shared, dragging 2 suitcases and a fireproof box filled with documents. The doorman asked if she needed help. She shook her head, eyes dry. I'm not coming back. She handed in the keys and didn't leave a forwarding address. The coastline town was small, quiet, the kind of place people escaped to, not from. Her childhood friend Marla met her at the station. Ivy hadn't seen her in 5 years, not since. a wedding they'd both attended as bridesmaids. They embraced with the kind of hug that doesn't ask questions, just listens. "I got you a place," Marla whispered. "I don't want anything fancy." "It's not, but it's yours." The small rental was 2 bedrooms, close to the ocean, with wooden floors and peeling paint that smelled like salt and second chances. Ivy unpacked slowly, setting up a nursery in the second room. She painted the walls herself, soft sage green, and pinned up tiny stars across the ceiling. Each stroke of paint felt like a declaration. This life is mine now. She spent the next month building structure from the ashes. New doctor, new community, new number. She changed her email, blocked every old contact, and left no breadcrumbs. Then, quietly, she filed the paperwork that a name changed in no longer Ivy Lancaster. The name Grayson used in every press photo, every business card smile, every fabricated article about the power couple. No, that name belonged to his narrative. She returned to her maiden name, not out of nostalgia, but power. Reclaiming herself meant walking away not just from a man, but from the version of her that had waited too long for him to choose her back. By the time autumn rolled in, Ivy was walking every morning with her hands resting on a stomach that now visibly curved beneath her sweaters. Strangers didn't ask if the father was around. Small towns knew how to mind their business. Marla helped her find a part-time remote job. Something flexible, something that reminded Ivy her brain still worked, her dreams still counted. Every night, she wrote in a journal. Not about Grayson, but about the kind of mother she wanted to be. Strong, unapologetic, free. The grocery store was unusually crowded for a Thursday morning. Ivy moved slowly down the checkout lane, a basket balanced on one hip and a hand pressed against her lower back. At 32 weeks, every movement came with a warning from her body, but she had promised herself she'd keep doing the little things. Grocery shopping, morning walks, living. She placed a box of chamomile tea and a few cans of soup onto the belt when she saw it. There, by the tabloids, Grayson Wolfe engaged to model bombshell. Brielle Monroe and the tech titan set to marry in Tuscany. The headline screamed in capital letters, splashed across a glossy image of Grayson holding the waist of a stunning blonde woman, both beaming. Under fairy lights, Ivy stared for a second longer than she meant to. Her breath didn't catch. Her heart didn't race. But something inside her shifted. She didn't flinch. She smiled. Back at her cottage, she left the groceries unpacked. The tea bags stayed boxed, the soup warming on the counter forgotten. She sat on the floor in the nursery, surrounded by tiny folded onesies and half-built cribs, and she pulled out the old notebook, the one she hadn't opened in weeks, the one filled with pages she'd started writing back when the pain was too fresh to speak. This time, she didn't write about heartbreak. She wrote about focus, about the moment when a woman stops begging the universe to explain why and starts asking, "What now?" 6 months. That's how long it had taken him to replace her. Less really, because Brielle must have already been there. Ivy remembered the earring in his car, the long business trips, the fake smiles. The betrayal wasn't surprising anymore. But seeing it on display, seeing her once promised wedding publicly traded for another woman's destination fairy tale, felt like watching someone else walk away with your voice. Except Ivy had a louder one now. She flipped open her laptop that evening. For the first time in months, she searched his name. Grayson Wolfe was everywhere. Interviews, stock news, luxury magazine spreads. He and Brielle were being marketed as a power couple. He had trademarked a new wellness brand under the slogan built for a new era. A slogan Ivy had once scribbled in a notebook during a brainstorming session over breakfast. Her idea, his name, her silence, his empire. She closed the laptop. No tears, just clarity. It wasn't about the wedding anymore, or even the twins. It was about pattern and theft, about power and erasure. That he hadn't just left her, he'd built a new story using the blueprints of everything they once shared. And now, she was ready to take it back, not with rage, not with scandal, but with strategy. The next morning, Ivy called. "Marla, I need the number of that legal contact you mentioned, the one who handled your sister's IP dispute." Marla paused on the other end. "You sure?" Ivy looked at the framed ultrasound photo on her wall, 2 tiny hearts frozen in motion. "Yes," she said. "I'm done being quiet." The coffee shop was quiet. tucked inside a refurbished post office turned bookstore. Ivy sat at the corner table, ankles slightly swollen, hands cradling a lukewarm herbal tea. Her phone buzzed once, then again. He was late. Typical, but when Amelia finally arrived, coat trailing, glasses fogged, laptop already half open, Ivy felt something settled, a connection to someone who knew her before Grayson. Still allergic to being on time? Ivy smirked. Still allergic to men. Amelia replied, settling in. They didn't waste time. Ivy explained everything. The pregnancy, the text, the silence, then the headlines. And finally, what clicked. I know this sounds emotional. Ivy said, but it's not just that. The slogan he's using? Built for a new era? It was mine. I have the drafts. The notes. I want to know if I have a legal leg to stand on. Amelia didn't blink. You might, she said. But I'll need to dig. 2 days later, Ivy sat by the window as rain tapped steadily against the glass. The twins shifted under her ribs like waves. The call came just past dusk, he used. Your name, Amelia said, to secure a federal trademark. And worse, he signed your signature on a licensing contract as a silent co-founder. Ivy's breath caught. That's fraud, Amelia continued. And if he claimed you were part of the design phase, without your consent, that's also IP violation and possibly perjury, depending on the investor paperwork. Ivy closed her eyes. Not to cry, but to focus, because now it was bigger than stolen words. It was stolen identity, stolen credit, stolen voice. Do I have a case? She asked. More than that, Amelia replied. You have leverage. The next morning, Ivy boxed up the old notebooks. She gathered everything, emails, photos, timeline notes, and labeled the folder Truth. She didn't want his money. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted to prove that behind every man who built his empire on someone else's silence, there was a woman who once handed him the bricks. Later that night, Ivy stood by the crib she hadn't finished building. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the electricity of purpose. Grayson had always known how to bend rules, but he never expected her to read the fine print. IT arrived in the late afternoon, wedged between a coupon flyer and a baby supply catalog. Ivy wouldn't have noticed it if not for the shimmer of gold trim under the sunlight. The envelope was thick, expensive, embossed with a silver emblem that made her stomach tighten. No return address. But she knew. She sliced the top open with a letter opener and slid out a single ivory card. At the top, in calligraphic font, Grayson Wolf and BRLLE cordially invite you to their engagement gala below that date, time, venue. A rooftop overlooking the skyline they once claimed together as home. The words pulsed like a dare. She read it twice, once with anger, then again with something colder, sharper. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message, an invitation delivered not out of courtesy, but cruelty. A spectacle designed to remind her where she didn't belong. Or maybe a trap, meant to bait her into a scene. Either way, she didn't flinch. She set the card on the counter and stared at it while her twins napped in the next room, their soft breathing rising and falling like tide. She hadn't spoken Grayson's name aloud in months, had trained herself not to react. But something about this performance, snapped the final thread. Ivy picked up her phone and dialed Amelia. It came, she said. Grayson? Amelia's voice sharpened. Engagement party. Full spectacle. And guess who got an invite? Silence. Then, what are you thinking? Ivy let the quiet answer. Amelia exhaled. You'll need something tailored. And legal armor. I have both, Ivy said. And proof. He doesn't know how much I've collected. That night, Ivy stood in front of her mirror, holding the card in one hand and her children's framed sonogram in the other. Two tiny shapes. 2 lives he walked away from. She didn't want revenge. She didn't need attention. She wanted a moment. 1 moment where he'd be forced to face what he discarded and realize he could never buy back what he lost. And if this invitation was meant to humiliate her, he'd regret sending it, because Ivy wouldn't be walking into that gala with fury. She'd be walking in with facts, and the 2 loudest truths in her life would be walking beside her, one on each hand. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the rooftop glowing under amber lights and cascading chandeliers. All heads turned. Ivy stepped onto the marble floor like a storm wrapped in velvet, crimson fabric hugging her figure. cascading behind her like a royal decree. Her chin lifted, her gaze calmed out on each side of her. A small hand gripped hers. Two identical boys, dressed in tailored black tuxedos, polished shoes, curls parted neatly, eyes wide with curiosity. The music faltered. Forks paused midair. Conversations trailed off. Cameras, real and on phones, rose like a wave. Click. Flash. Whisper. Grayson stood at the far end of the rooftop, near the champagne tower. He caught sight of her and froze, his mouth parted. One blink, then another. As if his brain refused to process the image before him, Brielle turned to him. Who is that? He didn't answer. Couldn't. His grip on her wrist tightened involuntarily. Ivy never looked his way. Not yet. She walked slowly, deliberately, through the crowd that parted like water around her. She wasn't escorted. She didn't need to be. Every step echoed with 3 years of silence, with every sleepless night, with every missed birthday, with every time she whispered, "Daddy's not here," into her boy's ears. But now, he was, and so were they. One of the twins tugged gently at her gown. "Mama, why are they all staring?" "Because we're beautiful," she whispered with a smile. The boy nodded seriously, gripping her hand tighter. They reached the center of the room. Ivy stopped. And only then, finally, did she look at him. Grayson T looked like a ghost inside his custom suit. Pale, tight-lipped, trying not to panic in front of an audience. Brielle followed his stare. Then saw the boys, same jawline, same eyes. Her face paled. "Ivy?" Grayson asked, voice hoarse. She tilted her head. "Calm." Regal. He stepped forward, but one of the children stepped in front of her, protectively. Grayson faltered. The boy didn't recognize him. And Grayson didn't even know which name to call out. The party didn't stop, but the tone had changed. Whispers churned. Phones buzzed. A few guests pretended not to watch, but everyone was. Ivy reached into her clutch and pulled out a single envelope. Cream-colored. Sealed. She held it up and handed it, not to Grayson, but to a nearby event photographer. "For the groom," she said softly. The man, stunned, took it. Then she looked at Grayson once more. "Congratulations," she said. "Looks like your party just got more memorable." With that, she turned to N.O. grand exit. No dramatic tears, just a woman who came with proof, not permission, and 2 children whose silence was louder than fireworks. As the elevator doors closed behind her, one of the boys asked, "Was that the man in the photo drawer?" Ivy smiled. Gently. "That was a man who once knew me, but never knew you." The doors shut behind them. Grayson stood amid a crumbling illusion, and the gala, once meant to impress the world, had become his reckoning. Grayson's hand gripped her arm the moment she stepped away from the crowd. Not tight, but firm, desperate to keep the image under wraps. He pulled her toward a marble hallway just off the main rooftop. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he hissed through clenched teeth, voice low but vibrating with rage. Ivy didn't flinch. "I'm giving you clarity," she said, coolly, and gently unfastened his hand from her arm. He scoffed, eyes darting back toward the crowd. "This was calculated. You planned this, bringing them here, in tuxedos, to crash my engagement." She reached into her clutch without looking away and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Open it," she said. Grayson hesitated, then snatched the envelope and tore it open. Inside, 3 documents. The first, DNA test results, confirming paternity. The second, a cease and desist letter for his company's use of her name in an active trademark. The third, a notice of pending legal action regarding intellectual property and parental abandonment. Grayson's face lost color. "You're suing me?" "I'm asserting what you tried to bury," she said. "These aren't threats, Grayson. They're receipts." He crumpled one of the pages, breathing hard. "You think this makes you strong? Walking in here with some stunt. This wasn't for you," she interrupted, her voice sharp now. "This was for them. They deserved to see the man who ran. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to end the performance." He stared at her, silent, unreadable. But behind his polished exterior, something cracked. His chest rose and fell faster now. He looked less like a mogul and more like a man unmasked. "Do they even know who I am?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied. "And unless a judge says otherwise, they never will." He backed away a step. "You're not thinking clearly. This will get ugly." She smirked. "You started ugly, Grayson. I'm just putting it under proper lighting." From the ballroom, laughter rose, a forced, too loud echo of normalcy. But the tone of the night had changed. Even Grayson could feel it, a shift in control he hadn't accounted for. Ivy turned to walk away. "You ruined this for me," he called after her. She paused at the edge of the corridor, looked back over her shoulder, eyes calm but unsparing. "No, Grayson. You ruined this the day you hit send on that text." Then she walked away, heels tapping against the stone floor like a ticking clock. The hallway echoed with silence. Grayson remained standing, the crumpled envelope in his fist. Proof, loss, and fear folded into one. The party pulsed on behind glass. Laughs. Too sharp, music too loud, champagne flutes clinking like hollow bells. But Brielle stood frozen near the corridor, her back pressed lightly to the gilded wall, hearing every word. They deserved to see the man who ran. Ivy's voice, cool, steady, devastating. Grayson's angry reply was muffled, but the names in the envelope weren't. DNA test. Trademark violation. Paternity claim. Brielle's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Her diamond engagement ring caught the chandelier light above, sparkling, mocking. She waited until Ivy's heels disappeared around the corner and Grayson's figure slumped like a toppled king. Then she turned, slipping quietly down the staff. Hallway she'd used once before. In Grayson's office upstairs, the lights were dim. She knew the code to the glass desk drawer. He'd told her once, proud of its custom build, his mother's birthday. Not hers. She sat in his leather chair and powered up the laptop. He was meticulous, digital to the bone. No paper trails. But the email folders told their own story. Subject line, "I'm late." From Ivy. Date, 14 months ago. The message was short, raw, vulnerable. She told him she might be pregnant. She needed him to talk to her. He never responded. Brielle opened another. Subject, confirmed. "It's twins." No reply. One more. Subject, "I'll raise them alone. I won't chase you." It had gone unread. The silence wasn't ignorance. Was intention. Grayson hadn't made a mistake. He'd made a decision. And now he was pretending to be a man caught off guard. She closed the laptop. The party buzzed on below like an opera from another world. Brielle stood, removed the engagement ring from her finger, and set it gently beside the laptop. A diamond, no longer tied to illusion. She didn't need a screaming scene. No shattered glass. No thrown wine. Just a door that closed behind her without sound. Outside, the night air felt clearer than anything inside that penthouse. Paparazzi still gathered, flashes blinking like a dying constellation. Brielle walked past them, head high, expression unreadable. "Miss Lane, where's Mr. Wolf?" She didn't answer, because she wasn't Miss Lane anymore. And she was done being someone's footnote. The courtroom was colder than Ivy expected. Marble floors, glass walls, and the hum of whispered judgments. Her legal team sat poised, polished, calm. Across the aisle, Grayson Wolf looked smaller than he ever had. No designer lighting, no camera filters. Just a man whose suit suddenly looked too sharp for his crumbling image. The documents had been filed. Fraud, paternity, intellectual property, theft. The case hadn't gone to trial yet, but the world had already seen the paperwork. Outside, the press did what they always did. Scorned fiancé reveals tech mogul's secret children. Wolf empire under fire after shocking DNA claims. Twin bombshell. Ivy Carrington returns with receipts. Hashtag swirled. Old pictures of Ivy surfaced. Screenshots of Grayson's gala speech, moments before she arrived, circulated with delicious irony. She didn't read the comments. She didn't need the validation, because the ones who mattered? They were home, in matching pajamas, painting plastic dinosaurs and singing off-key lullabies. Her lawyer leaned over in court and whispered, "You don't have to speak today. Just stay composed." Ivy nodded. That she could do. Grayson tried to appear indifferent. But she saw the twitch in his jaw, the tremble in his fingers as his team passed him new filings. The judge adjourned early. No rulings yet, just groundwork. But the shift had already begun. Ivy left through the back door, camera-free, unbothered that night. She made grilled cheese with the boys. "Can we eat on the floor?" One asked. "Why the floor?" She smiled. "Because it's fun." So they did. A picnic on the carpet, with juice boxes and giggles, and no talk of lawsuits or liars. And for the first time in years, Ivy breathed without heaviness. She wasn't chasing justice anymore. Justice had found its own way home. The ink on the settlement was still drying when Ivy left the city behind. No press conference. No public victory dance. Just a quiet drive back to the coastal town that had watched her rebuild from the ashes. The terms of the lawsuit were sealed. But those who followed the case knew what it meant. Grayson Wolfe had folded. His company issued a vague apology, couched in legalese. His face had disappeared from the magazine covers. The gala photos vanished from his social feed. But Ivy? She wasn't interested in watching him disappear. She had bigger things to do. A month later, she stood in front of a cozy bookstore crowd, sunlight dappling the wood floor through tall windows. Her hair was loosely tied back, and a soft gray sweater clung to her shoulders. There was no stylist, no glam team, just her, a stack of books, and a pair of toddler sneakers peeking out from under the signing table. Her new book, Two Heartbeats, later, rested beside her. It wasn't a revenge memoir. It was a story about strength, timing, and the terrifying beauty of choosing yourself, especially when you have no one else left. It's not about him, she told the small crowd, voice steady. It's about what came after. There was a quiet pause, then soft applause, a few tears. A woman in the front row nodded, clutching her own child against her chest. Her twins, now almost 4, sat beside her on a rug made of recycled yarn. Flipping through children's books with too many colors and not enough plot point, one of them stood and handed her a crayon drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands under a sun. Is this us? She asked. Nope, he grinned. It's us tomorrow. She laughed. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't need billboards or headlines. Sometimes it looked like grilled cheese dinners and story time. Grayson emailed once that IT arrived weeks after. The settlement. No subject line. Just 3 lines. I read your book. You were right. I wasn't ready. She didn't reply, not out of anger, not out of pride. She simply didn't need anything from him anymore. The twins were healthy. Her life was whole. And for the first time in years, her name was hers again. No longer tangled in someone else's narrative. As the crowd began to leave, a little girl with curls walked up to the table and whispered, "When I grow up, I want to be like you." Ivy smiled, bent down, and said, "Then you already are." The bookstore owner offered her another reading next month. She accepted, not because she needed the spotlight, but because it turns out, when you stop hiding, your story helps others find their own way out of the dark.